Following completing my first year at Loughborough University, in today's video I'll be providing you with my honest review of my first year experience. Starting off with the academics, the university aimed to deliver a hybrid approach this year, but due to COVID restrictions, most of my lectures were online for this year. I only actually ended up staying on campus for the first semester due to COVID restrictions preventing us going back for most of the second semester. So when I was on campus during semester 1, I had roughly one lecture a week in person, which was either at the James France building or over at the Edward Herbert building, and these are both in Central Park, so they were around 10 minutes away from my accommodation located in the student village. In terms of the online mode of delivery, the university and the lecturers actually did a really good job of this considering the circumstances. The way it was formatted this year was in semester 1, our lectures were delivered to us through on-demand videos, which meant the videos were uploaded online. You could view them anytime you wished and take notes from them. I personally wasn't the biggest fan of this because engagement was really limited. So instead, for the second semester, the university actually shifted their approach to an online live lectures predominantly. So what this meant instead is that you'd have within your timetable specific slots where the lecturers would do a live lecture over MS Teams, and then so all the class would join and you could be able to ask questions in real time. And so I found this a lot more enjoyable and a lot more engaging, as you could ask those questions in real time as opposed to having to submit a question via the Learn forum at a later date. As with all lectures at the university, whether they be online or in person, they're always recorded and are accessible by the Learn Capture Review system. So either if you were able to attend a lecture or if you weren't able to attend a lecture, you've always got that system to back them up and view them at a different date or going back and review them later on. The library at Loughborough University has 4 levels. I actually only needed to go to the library once this year as there was only one book that I couldn't access via the online catalogue. But aside from this one book, all of the other books and resources that I needed throughout the year were made available through the online catalogue, which was really handy to use this year. Also, if you're at the library and you have any questions, then you can ask the guys at the inquiry desk. They're all really helpful. I don't know, I had 1 or 2 questions at the start of the year, just so I was getting my head around things, and they all answered these with great detail and offered me some really useful advice. In terms of the academic support offered, firstly, my personal tutor was a really useful guidance and advice figure for me during my first year, as I had quite a lot of questions about settling into university life. As particularly, like for most students, the main things that kind of crop up and can be a bit confusing can be surrounding things like reading lists, referencing, getting used to how exams work, how many hours you're meant to put in outside a lecture. So these were things that I really struggled with during my first year at Loughborough, as I was spending loads and loads of time on reading and not really getting much benefit out of it. I was just reading countless amounts of information and not really taking in any actual useful information from that. So what I did was I'd often write down any questions I had, and with your personal tutor, you have a meeting once a week. So what I would do is I'd get my questions together, ask my personal tutor, and I think I had one external meeting as he had a bit of time aside. He said, yep, we can schedule something in, had a quick chat, ran a couple of questions, and he provided me perfect amount of reassurance and gave me some guidance and outline of how to basically go about reading lists, how to go about referencing, what some good useful pieces of advice to get around it is to save a lot of time. And it really did benefit my university experience, and it benefited my grades as well, because from all my grades from first year during all my modules, I managed to get a first, and undoubtedly from the help of my personal tutor, that really helped me with that information, that guidance from the start, get into those habits, understand how the grading systems roughly work, how uni life works more importantly, and that enabled me to have a great time in first year. So if you're watching this video, I would say a quick piece of advice is if you're experiencing similar things, then get in touch with your personal tutor who you'll be assigned with at the beginning of the year, and just feel free to ask them any questions you have. And also don't feel afraid to ask other students, as I know that once I took in information, I was more than willing to help others out and share the information I learned, as I want everyone to help and succeed as well. So also tying into that, if you guys ever in the future want to see any videos on things like how to do reading lists, referencing lists, or how to get a 1-1 in most of your exams and coursework, then feel free to let me know in the comments below. I'm always open to suggestions, and I always want you guys to do the best, have the best experience at uni, so you're not spending all your time studying, so you also get some of the social life, as remember, uni is about the whole experience, not just the academics, even though they are very important. So let me know in the comments down below of anything you want to see in the future. As well as this, if I had any questions relating specifically to my modules, then I could either ask these during optional drop-in sessions if these were provided for that module, or via the Learn discussion forums. Now, if you're wondering what Learn is basically Loughborough's VLE, so virtual learning environment, and you log into this when you get your IT credentials given to you at the start of the year. Learn basically has everything you'll ever need for your course. So within that, there's a small aspect of that, which is under all your modules, you have the Learn forums. So these are discussion forums where you can basically submit any questions you have for your lecturers. You can also view the questions submitted by other students, so I recommend before submitting a question, check those and make sure the question hasn't already been answered. But if it hasn't, then you can literally submit your question on there, and the lecturers always respond to these with great detail. When reflecting back on the way that I treated my university degree, the way I approached things was that I tried to treat it like a 9-to-5 job. So this meant I was doing more than enough hours in the day, whilst also giving myself enough time on my own to make sure I wasn't burning out. Not many students do that many hours. Most students, to be honest, do a lot less and still do perfectly fine. It's just because it takes me a little bit longer than other people to do certain stuff and like make notes down. So that's why I just tend to do a couple more hours than what typically most students will do. A lot of students only do 2-3 hours a day, if that, and they still do perfectly fine. The approach that I found worked for me was before lectures, I would look at the slides that were uploaded, have a little look through the slides, see what kind of content would be covered in the lecture, and also look up any terms if I didn't know entirely what they meant, just so I had a rough idea. Also, as a bit of reassurance, for some lectures it can be completely normal to find that after the lecture immediately, it doesn't make any sense. For most of my modules and most of my lectures, this wasn't the case. Most of the time I'd have a rough idea of what was going on, have a good sense of where things were going and be able to just fill in my notes. But I know that for one module we had this year, it was very much independently led. So we'd have, say, 2 hours of the lecture where we'd go through a lot of information in really complex detail, and you'd quite often come out the lecture. I know a lot of students struggled with this year, and they'd feel quite puzzled and a bit overwhelmed, but the lecturer firstly reassured us of this, and his point was exactly right, that when you'd go back and review the lecture and review the notes and look at the further reading and the further explanations and look up certain terms, then the content would actually make sense, and then you'd revisit it and it would make perfect sense the way he'd explained it, even though surprisingly enough the first time you'd heard the information it might seem very, very overwhelming. Moving on to the exams, there's 2 exam seasons. My first set of exams were in January and my second set of exams were in June. In the first set of exams I had 4 exams and 1 piece of coursework due in that semester, and for the second set of exams in semester 2 I had 3 exams in exam season and I had 2 bits of coursework due just before the exam season began. When reflecting back on the exam season, I would say firstly, like most students, I found the online exams were much more beneficial compared to the normal format of exams, just because it felt like it was actually testing our knowledge rather than testing our recall of memory. Moving on to the accommodation section of the video, I stayed in my first year in halls, and I stayed in Royce Hall, which is located in the student village, and the room option accommodation package I opted for was a 4-foot bed with an ensuite. Now, I have already spoken about my time in my accommodation during my complete guide and review video of Loughborough University, as well as providing an overview of all the accommodations and reviews from all students who have lived in every accommodation in my complete guide and review of every accommodation video. But for the purpose of this video, I will give a short little summary of what my time in halls, in Royce specifically, during my first year was like. So first up, with Royce being catered 5 days a week, 3 meals a day, I found this really suited me, as during the week it was very convenient, especially when coming in early morning sessions from AU training, where we'd have training from 6:30 AM till 8 AM. Then you could have breakfast basically there for you, or if you come back from late lectures or from lunch or dinner, then the food's already there provided for you, to say you having to cook it. That was actually quite convenient. Also, the food was a lot better than I thought it would be, and a lot higher in expectations than I expected, as they had a wide variety that keeps improving year on year. So there were healthy options, there were options to cater for different allergies, different meal options every day of the week. So it wasn't just a standardized menu that was the same fixated every single day. So that side of things I was really impressed with. Now, if you want catering for 7 days a week, that's only provided over at Towers. But for me, and like for most others, 5 days a week actually suited really well, because it still gave you that sense of independence on the weekend to cook for yourself, so you're not constantly bottle fed and you have a bit of variety. So for me personally, 5 days a week perfectly suited my lifestyle. I remember when I moved in, there was 1 or 2 very small issues with my room, but these were fixed almost immediately by the maintenance team, and also for the rest of the year I had no further issues with my room. The only downside of living in halls, which is the case across all halls, is circuit laundry, if I'm being really honest. It's not terrible, but it's just when you go to wash your clothes, it doesn't always do the best job. The best part of living in halls is definitely the people you meet, as honestly during my first year I met so many incredible, amazing people. It makes meeting friends so much more easier when you're all together, and undoubtedly that halls experience that you get, particularly in first year with your normal freshers experience, which I'll talk about in a minute, is unlike any other you'll probably experience during the rest of your university life, certainly. And in relation to the university's approach to accommodation during COVID, from January through to May, the university offered full rebates for any students who were not allowed to return to campus. I was one of these students, as my course was not permitted to return to campus due to COVID lockdown restrictions. So this was extremely beneficial, no doubt, as it saved me so much money, and it's a gesture that really highlights and shows the positive nature of the university. In terms of freshers, obviously freshers this year was very different to the normal. My hall's freshers theme for this year was Roaring Royce, so throwing it back to the 1920s. Some of the events during freshers included neon themed silent disco, punch parties, black and gold tie night, cocktail nights, etc. There was a couple of events we were able to do, compliant with COVID restrictions. Now in my other videos I've talked about some of the other events that the union put on and that are available in town, but in terms of what my experience involved, basically most of the time we spent a lot of the time during our blocks, obviously to comply with the COVID restrictions, to avoid breaking the regulations or avoiding any fines. And so during this time, we often would make up events of our own throughout the year, just to kind of give a bit of entertainment in what was otherwise quite a dull setting. So what we would do, for example, is we would celebrate things like Halloween perhaps, so we'd all dress up and have like a party. We'd get things like lights, the speakers, and just try and make our little block that we were living in, our little household, just all that bit more entertaining and a bit more lively, just to kind of create a somewhat form of atmosphere, which was actually leading to loads of really enjoyable nights. So we'd have Halloween, like I mentioned, for instance. We'd celebrate things like Diwali, because quite a lot of people from different diversities and different backgrounds celebrated Diwali, so we all celebrated that together. Sorry, Diwali. Just realised I said that wrong. Also, we'd have things like Secret Santa, that was something that we all did, and we'd have like things like roast dinner, perhaps we wanted to cook all that together before Christmas. So yeah, there was loads of different events that we'd kind of celebrate, and we'd have other things, for example, like pub golf. We'd create that one night, we'd have different holes for all the different rooms. We were always trying to create different ideas, have different theme nights, have different parties on the weekend, just to give some form of social atmosphere, as there wasn't a lot that the university could do otherwise to kind of combat the restrictions that were in place from COVID, unfortunately. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about mental health within this video is because this year at Loughborough University, like at most other universities in the UK and across the world, unfortunately, we've also lost students to suicide this year in what's been a particularly hard year for everyone. Now, the reason why I wanted to include this within this video is because I want to spread the message and hopefully raise some further awareness of mental health, so that we can all look after each other and help take further measures in the future to protect each other's mental health. Now on this channel, I strive to provide you with the best support and guidance I can offer, and always be honest and truthful. So I feel it's appropriate for this section of the video to actually share with you that I actually have anxiety myself. Now obviously I'm not the only person in the world that has anxiety. There's thousands of people who have anxiety as well, and unfortunately a lot of them feel afraid to speak out about it due to being perceived as weak or feeling insecure or being seen as an outsider or anything along those lines. So trying to find support if you're not willing to share can be very difficult. So from the advice and guidance that I've received over the years that have helped me manage my mental health, and also for those of you watching, even if you don't have anxiety, you have X or Y instead, or even if you don't have anything necessarily medically defined, hopefully some of this information I'm going to share with you now will help you. My best piece of advice, and this is going to definitely happen probably at one point or another during uni, because uni is very stressful. Moving in, it's a new environment, during your time, exams, being away from home, it's going to be stressful. So you will probably find at one point or another, it might not happen to everyone, but a lot of you probably watching this video will find at one point or another you might feel like things are getting a bit overwhelming. So if that ever happens to you, then I would say my best piece of advice is to try and speak to people, and definitely speak to people sooner rather than later, as undoubtedly prevention is better than cure. Now if you're wondering who to speak to, then this could include people like a counsellor if it's something really serious, or a long-term mental health condition for instance, or something that you're really worked up over. Or alternatively, it can be as simple as someone like your flatmates or your friends from home or your family, depending upon your personal circumstances. Then definitely speak to someone. And if there's no one you can speak to within your immediate family or your immediate friends list, or if you're not in touch, for example, with a counsellor if you've got something more serious going on, then instead get in touch with one of the hotlines or some of the services provided at your university. If you're going to Loughborough, for example, we've got things like the Medical Centre, Disability and Health Portal, who put in measures for students who are suffering from any mental health conditions or disabilities. Also, you've got things like Nightline, which is a confidential student advisory service. Also within your halls, if you're in halls, you've got welfare and diversity reps, and also within the union as a whole, you've got the welfare and diversity officer. And if you're watching this video and don't go to Loughborough, I'm sure your university has measures in place of one form or another. And even if they don't, there's also national hotlines. I'll try and put a couple in the description box below, as I know how important and how useful these tools can be. Now, I don't want that to be your only thought going into university, as university is amazing and there's only a very small chance that something regarding your mental health might pop up, and it might just be a day or a random week during your whole free times, or just a little small time phase. But I just wanted to get that message out so that if something does crop up for some of you, as like I said, uni can be stressful, then you know how to deal with it so that you still have the best university experience possible, as hopefully by encouraging this conversation we can get rid of that stigma associated with mental health. And if you've got something that you're perhaps wondering over, you can just ask someone, have a quick 5-minute informal chat about it, and then go on and have a great time and move on from it. So yeah, that's all really for that little section. I don't want it to be too doom and gloom, as university is amazing. It is a fantastic time, and for 90% of the time, if not 99% of the time, I don't want to jinx anything, someone come back with me saying I got a slight percentage wrong, but most of the time essentially you're going to have an amazing time. But just in case you're struggling at any point, there is that support there, and we're all here for you, and we want you the best for you. Now, in terms of the society, sport and part-time work, I actually didn't join any societies during my first year, but next year I'm possibly considering joining one or two. I need to have a look through myself, and I advise you definitely to have a look at the societies, as there's so many amazing societies to offer, with over 100 provided at the university. But one of the elements of the university that I did get involved in was the LSU RAG department. Now, what LSU RAG is essentially it's the fundraising section of the university. Through LSU RAG, in July 2022, I will be spending 2 weeks in Chiang Mai, Thailand. In the first week, I will be spending that in a village hill tribe, helping to improve the living standards and the lives of those living in those conditions. And the second week, I will be volunteering in an elephant nature park sanctuary to help rescue and rehabilitate any recovered elephants. In terms of the sport, undoubtedly the opportunity to continue to play sport at the highest level possible, whilst getting a degree at a top 10 academic institution, was a big appeal for me behind joining Loughborough University. This year I've been fortunate enough to make it through the trials process to represent the university in AU futsal. Now, this is actually a sport I hadn't played before. Like most of the other lads on the team, we'd originally come from a footballing background. Being part of the AU futsal club was undoubtedly one of my highlights of the year, whether it be the early training sessions in the morning, which were quite difficult to get up to at times, with training starting at 6:30 AM and not finishing until 8, followed by a day of lectures, can be quite tiring sometimes, and also with games on the weekends. But it was undoubtedly such an amazing experience, and also kindly enough we were invited in December, a few of us, to go and train with the first team squad, which had a few of the guys who played for either the England international team or their respective international team. So yeah, that was such a great learning experience, to learn from seniors who play for their country as such an introduction level to the sport. To train alongside them was such a great learning experience, and really shows the performance platform and performance progression that's in place at the university for their students to balance both that sporting life as well as getting your academics sorted. In terms of part-time work, during my first year I was fortunate enough to become a student ambassador for Loughborough University. With the initial application process having over 500 applicants, you can see that the demand was very, very high for such a role. During my first year as an ambassador, my roles have included predominantly making vlog-stroke videos like these, and also helping out with any in-person events, whether it be campus tours or showcase events for any new prospective students. If you're interested in learning how to become a student ambassador, as well as hearing my top tips for the application process, then I strongly recommend you watching the How to Become a Student Ambassador video on my channel after watching this video. So that's been all for my first year review of Loughborough University. If you want to learn more about the university, then I strongly recommend checking out the other videos on my channel. If you have any questions, queries or suggestions, feel free to let me know down in the comments below, as it's always fantastic to hear back from all of you. If you found today's video useful, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and turn notifications on to be notified when the next video comes out. That's all from me, wishing you guys all the best, and I'll see you very soon.